Dr. Celine Ishida sat alone in the dimly lit control room, staring at the holographic data before her. Once hailed as the brightest mind in exobiology, she had expected to be at the frontier of humanity's expansion into the stars. Yet here she was, a part of a high-tech think tank, stuck in a sterile room, analyzing theoretical models and dealing with endless bureaucratic red tape. The glory of her past discoveries seemed like a distant memory. She had once believed that her work would help bridge the gap between humanity and the unknown depths of space. But the reality was much less thrilling. Earth's grand ambitions of peaceful coexistence with alien species were stalling, and Celine was beginning to wonder if the dream of intergalactic diplomacy was just that, a dream. The year was 2123. Humanity had made remarkable progress in space exploration, but the real breakthrough had come in the form of the Orzaki. A mysterious and technologically advanced species, the Orzaki had offered humanity access to their vast knowledge and resources in exchange for one thing: rare minerals found only on Earth. These minerals were crucial for the Orzaki's continued advancements, and in return, they promised to share technologies that would revolutionize humanity's own progress. Celine had been part of the team tasked with fostering this delicate alliance. She believed in the potential of what the Orzaki offered: cutting-edge technologies, new energy sources, and medical advancements that could solve Earth's most pressing issues. The thought of helping humanity evolve through peaceful collaboration with another species filled her with purpose. But, deep inside, she also felt a growing unease. The Orzaki were enigmatic and secretive. Their advances in technology were beyond anything humans could even begin to comprehend. And yet, they remained distant. Were they truly helping humanity, or was there more to the story? It was during one of her routine data exchanges with the Orzaki that the first crack in the alliance appeared. Celine was reviewing some data packets when she noticed an anomaly, a transmission embedded in the encryption. It seemed harmless at first, just another set of data about the Orzaki's energy technologies. But as she dug deeper, she discovered something chilling. The Orzaki had been secretly extracting more than just minerals from Earth. They were mining humanity's intellectual property. At first, Celine thought it might be a mistake. After all, the Orzaki were known for their vast technological prowess, and it was possible they had simply misunderstood the data. But as she continued to investigate, the pattern became clear. They weren't just taking raw materials. They were using Earth's intellectual capital, the ideas, innovations, and inventions that humanity had yet to patent or share. Key scientific breakthroughs, unrefined AI algorithms, even entire cultural blueprints were being siphoned off, far beyond what had been agreed upon in the alliance. The realization hit her like a punch to the stomach. The Orzaki were not here to help humanity. They were exploiting Earth's greatest asset, its creativity and ingenuity. The promise of shared technology was a fade, a distraction to keep humanity complacent while they harvested its mind and spirit. They weren't simply offering technology. They were taking knowledge at a scale so vast that it threatened to cripple Earth's future progress. But there was more. As Celine dug deeper, she uncovered something even more disturbing: the involvement of powerful human figures in the betrayal. It wasn't just the Orzaki who were responsible. There were humans, leaders, executives, and scientists who had been complicit in this scheme, knowingly handing over humanity's intellectual treasures in exchange for short-term gains. It was a conspiracy that ran deep, one that threatened not only Earth's sovereignty, but the very essence of what it meant to be human. The weight of the discovery felt crushing. Celine was at a crossroads. What should she do with this knowledge? Expose it to the world? She knew the consequences would be catastrophic. The fragile peace with the Orzaki would disintegrate. The Earth would face immediate backlash, and the Alliance, a lifeline for humanity's future, would collapse. The Orzaki might retaliate, cutting off the technologies they had shared, and Earth would be left with little but the crumbs of a shattered partnership. The war for Earth's survival could begin, but if she stayed silent, if she allowed the theft to continue, what did that mean for humanity's future? Could she live with the knowledge that her species was being robbed of its potential? Could she justify turning a blind eye to the moral and ethical cost of the alliance? The decision was far from easy, and it grew even more complicated when Celine learned the extent of the conspiracy. Powerful corporate leaders, high-ranking officials in the government, and even members of the scientific community had been in on the deal. They had made their own Faustian bargains with the Orzaki, trading away humanity's intellectual capital for short-term profits and political advantage. Some of them had even convinced themselves that this was for the greater good, that Earth would eventually benefit from the Orzaki's technology. But Selene could see the truth. They were only using Earth as a stepping stone, a resource to be consumed and discarded when they were done. With her heart racing, Selene stared at the data, knowing that one decision could alter the fate of humanity. She had to act. But what path would she choose? In that moment, Selene realized that the world she thought she knew, one of cooperation, hope, and peaceful alliance, was an illusion. And the truth she had uncovered was far darker than she could have ever imagined. The catalyst had been set in motion. There was no going back. Selene Ishida had hoped for clarity when she exposed the Orzaki's theft of humanity's intellectual property. She had imagined angry protests, a global outcry demanding action. But reality was far from what she had envisioned. Instead of rallying support, the revelation sent shockwaves through humanity's leaders. She had expected them to feel betrayed, to rise up and confront the Orzaki. Instead, they did the unthinkable. Many of them closed ranks with the very aliens who had betrayed Earth. She was the outcast now, a threat to peace. A rogue scientist meddling in things beyond her understanding. And it wasn't just the humans who were against her. Within days of her discovery becoming public, a group of human operatives broke into her apartment, barely giving her time to react. They had come to silence her, to make sure she wouldn't talk, expose the truth further. As they cornered her, Selene realized they weren't just ordinary agents, they were connected to the corporate elites who had struck the deal with the Orzaki. A few carefully orchestrated moves allowed her to escape, but the message was clear: she was no longer safe. Her next move was to seek refuge with the very aliens who had helped expose the Orzaki's manipulation, a faction of exiled Orzaki defectors. She knew they had knowledge of the technology she needed to decrypt the Orzaki's encrypted data streams, the key to proving the scale of the theft and corruption. But that technology was buried on Mars, deep within an old, abandoned research station. Mars, once a promising frontier for human expansion, was now a lawless zone, overrun by militias, scavengers, and mercenaries. It was a place where the political alliances of Earth and the Orzaki had no power. A place where survival was all that mattered. Time was running out. Every day, the Orzaki grew more aggressive in their pursuit of Selene. If they caught her, the truth would be buried for good. If humanity ever learned of the full extent of the theft, the alliance would fall apart, and Earth would be left defenseless. She had no choice but to go to Mars. And she couldn't do it alone. The journey to Mars was treacherous, full of narrow escapes and hidden dangers. Selene had to navigate not only the hostile Martian environment, but also avoid the surveillance system still active from Earth's old military days. Every ship she boarded, every shadow she passed under, was a potential threat. The only thing that kept her going was the knowledge that Mars held the key to everything. If she could get to the research station and activate the device that could decrypt the Orzaki's data, humanity would finally have the proof it needed to fight back. But things weren't as simple as she hoped. When Selene finally arrived on Mars, she was forced to seek the help of the Orzaki defectors. Their leader, Jorath, was a former Orzaki scientist who had grown disillusioned with the Empire's ways. He had turned his back on his own people when he realized they saw Earth not as an ally, but as a resource to be exploited. The defectors had their own agenda, however. They didn't just want to expose the Orzaki, they wanted to take the knowledge humanity had lost and use it to fight back. They had their own plan, one that mirrored the very tactics the Orzaki had used against humanity. It was a plan that could turn the tables on the aliens, but at a moral cost. Jorath's followers believed the only way to truly defeat the Orzaki was to fight fire with fire. To take back what was stolen, to use the same methods of intellectual theft, and even stronger tactics. Humanity must evolve beyond its naivety, Jorath said one night as Selene sat in his hidden Martian base, the lights dimmed low. We must be as ruthless as they were. Selene recoiled at his words. The idea of using the same tactics that had betrayed humanity in the first place felt wrong. She had spent her life believing in diplomacy, in peaceful cooperation. But now, as she listened to Jorath, she understood the pressure the human race faced. The galaxy was vast and brutal, and peace seemed like a luxury few could afford. Was Jorath right? Was this the only way to ensure humanity's survival? The moral dilemma gnawed at her. Celine had always prided herself on her principles, on her belief that humanity could rise above the darkness of the universe and carve out a place in the stars through knowledge and peace. But in the face of the Orzakis' unrelenting exploitation and betrayal, could she still afford to hold on to those ideals? As Celine grappled with the question, the situation with her longtime colleague, Captain Elias Mackenzie, grew more complicated. Elias had once been an idealist like her. They had worked together for years, fighting for a future where humanity and the stars could coexist peacefully. But in recent months, his views had shifted. He had come to believe that the Orzaki alliance was Earth's best shot at survival. And the more Celine uncovered about the truth, the more Elias seemed to pull away from her. It was as if the man she had once trusted above all others was no longer the person she knew. When Celine contacted him from Mars, their conversation quickly devolved into a heated argument. Elias accused her of endangering humanity's future. "You don't understand, Celine," he said, his voice filled with frustration. "The Orzaki have what we need. You're throwing away everything we've worked for. This alliance is our chance to survive in the galaxy. But at what cost?" Celine replied, her voice trembling. "You're willing to sacrifice everything, even our humanity, just to survive? You think they'll protect us forever, Elias? You've seen their true intentions." Elias was silent for a moment. Then he spoke with a cold certainty. "I will do whatever it takes to ensure humanity's survival, even if it means making deals with the devil." The words cut deeper than she expected. It wasn't just the aliens who had changed, it was him too. The alliance had corrupted him in ways Celine couldn't fully understand. She didn't want to believe it, but the rift between them was too wide now. The trust they once shared was gone. As the days passed, Celine continued to piece together the truth about her own past, about a mysterious alien artifact she had once stumbled upon as a child. A fragment of Orzaki technology that seemed to have no purpose then, but now, it seemed to hold the key to understanding the Orzaki's true intentions. The piece of technology she'd forgotten about, hidden deep in her memory, was resurfacing. It was the missing piece she needed to expose the full depth of the conspiracy, and it might just be the one thing that could save humanity from itself. The road ahead was unclear, filled with dangers, betrayals, and decisions that could change the course of history. But Celine was determined. The stakes had never been higher. Celine stood in the dimly lit command center of the abandoned Martian research station, her hands trembling as she decrypted the final layer of data. The files she had uncovered were worse than she could have ever imagined. Her initial discovery that the Orzaki had been stealing humanity's intellectual property had been only the surface. What lay beneath was a galaxy-altering truth. The Orzaki were not here to help humanity. They weren't interested in peaceful coexistence or mutual advancement. They had never been. The theft of Earth's knowledge was part of a larger scheme, one that had been decades in the making, designed to reshape the galaxy in ways humanity could never have anticipated. The Orzaki had no interest in being partners with Earth. They saw humanity as an experiment, a species to be used and discarded when the time was right. Earth's unique genetic and intellectual traits made it a valuable resource, a commodity to be harvested for the Orzaki's grand vision. The Orzaki had been quietly infiltrating human society, manipulating the political elites and scientific communities, planting the seeds for a future in which humanity would become part of a vast galactic collective. They didn't need Earth's resources for their own survival. They were preparing to absorb humanity into a galaxy-spanning empire. Earth was being primed for assimilation, its unique intellectual resources extracted to fuel the Orzaki's plans, while humanity itself would eventually lose its autonomy and identity, transformed into mere tools for the Orzaki's expansion. The magnitude of the revelation left Celine breathless. The Orzaki weren't just stealing ideas, they were shaping the very idea of what it meant to be a superior species. The idea of evolution was being rewritten across the stars, and humanity was no longer a proud contender in the galactic dance. Humanity's potential to defy, to resist, to be independent had made them a target. The Orzaki weren't just erasing humanity's future, they were reshaping the very fabric of what it meant to be human in a universe where survival depended on submission to ancient powers. Celine's worldview shattered. All her life, she had believed that humanity's place in the stars was one of growth and mutual respect. She had thought that peaceful coexistence was possible. Now, she realized that humanity's defiance had made them the anomaly, the outlier in a galaxy full of ancient species who had long since given up their autonomy in favor of submission. The Orzaki weren't just taking, they were rewriting the rules of existence itself, and humanity was caught in the crossfire. But this wasn't just about Earth anymore. It wasn't just about humanity's future. It was about the galaxy itself, the power struggle between factions older than human civilization, the battle between beings who saw life as a commodity to be harvested. Humanity was being used as a pawn in a larger game. Her thoughts were interrupted by a quiet voice behind her. She turned, her heart sinking as she saw Elias Mackenzie step out from the shadows. He wasn't alone. A small group of Orzaki agents stood behind him, their eyes glowing with an eerie intensity. Elias, the man she had once trusted more than anyone, stood before her with a cold expression. "I didn't want you to find out like this," he said, his voice flat. "But I've been working with them all along." "The Orzaki were right, Celine. You just don't understand. This isn't about losing humanity, it's about surviving. Earth, humanity, we were never going to make it alone. The Orzaki offer us the chance to be something more. To evolve. To secure a future for the human race." Celine's mind spun. The man she had believed in, the one who had shared her hopes for a better future, had turned his back on everything they had fought for. The betrayal stung, deeper than any wound she had ever experienced. You've been working with them?" She whispered, disbelief choking her words. "All this time, Elias?" He didn't answer right away, his eyes glistening with a strange mix of sadness and resolution. "It was the only way. You think we have a future if we stand alone? We can't fight the entire galaxy, Celine. The Orzaki offer us what no one else will. You're blinded by your ideals. This is the only way humanity survives." A lump formed in Celine's throat. The Elias she had known, the Elias who had stood with her through countless battles and challenges, who had fought for humanity's independence, was gone. In his place was someone who had embraced the Orzaki's vision, no matter the cost. She couldn't understand it. She wouldn't. "You're wrong," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "This is not survival. It's submission. They want to strip us of everything we are, Elias. Our creativity, our identity. They want to make us part of their empire. You're giving up humanity for a lie." For a moment, Elias looked conflicted, torn between the choice he had made and the person he had once been. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, "but this is the way forward. I can't let you stop this." Before Celine could react, Elias moved swiftly, knocking the device she had been working on out of her hands. The Orzaki agents stepped forward, their eyes glowing brighter, ready to strike. In that instant, Celine understood what she had to do. The device in her hands, the key to exposing the Orzaki's plans, had to be destroyed. It was the only way to prevent the galaxy-altering knowledge from getting into the wrong hands. It meant losing the only leverage she had, but humanity's future depended on it. She turned, preparing to destroy the device. But Elias was faster. He lunged at her, trying to stop her. In the chaos that followed, Celine made a decision that would haunt her forever. She slammed her fist into the control panel, activating the device's self-destruct mechanism. ASA, the device sparked and died. Elias' face twisted with anguish. He was too late. "I'm sorry," she whispered, tears filling her eyes. She hadn't wanted this. She hadn't wanted to lose him like this. But Elias didn't speak. Instead, he stepped forward, pushing her aside just as the device exploded in a burst of blinding light. The shockwave threw them both backward, and when the dust settled, Elias was gone. In that final moment, As he lay dying in the wreckage, Elias spoke one last time. "You were right, Selene, but it's too late now." With his death, the final thread of hope Selene had clung to snapped. The man she had trusted most in the world was gone, and with him, part of her belief in humanity's ability to rise above. She had chosen to save Earth, but at what cost? The galaxy was changing, and humanity's place in it was now uncertain. What did it mean to survive, if the price of survival was your soul? Selene didn't know. But one thing was certain: the future had been irrevocably altered. There was no going back. The device was gone. The Orzaki's plans, for now, were thwarted. But Selene knew, deep down, that this wasn't a victory. Not really. She had made the impossible choice, the only one she could live with. By destroying the device, she had sealed humanity's fate. No longer could anyone negotiate with the Orzaki. No more alliances. The hope of peace between Earth and the Orzaki was gone, extinguished forever. Instead of leading to an era of peace, her decision ignited a new phase of struggle for humanity. The Orzaki, enraged by the destruction of their plans, were far from defeated. They would regroup and their methods would become more aggressive. They had underestimated humanity's will to fight, and now they would come at Earth with everything they had. But Selene wasn't prepared to run. No, she had become something far more dangerous than a fugitive. She had become a symbol of defiance. People across Earth, disillusioned with the so-called peace the Orzaki offered, began to rally around her, seeing in her the embodiment of humanity's potential for independence. She was both a hero and a fugitive. It was a strange position to be in, but one she wore without hesitation. Humanity had learned something crucial. They weren't helpless pawns in the galaxy's vast game. They had the ability to choose. Earth's government and military forces, now fragmented and uncertain, couldn't protect their home from the Orzaki. Humanity was alone. The Orzaki were coming, not as diplomats, but as conquerors. With every passing day, Earth became more of a target. Yet, Selene knew something the Orzaki didn't. Humanity had only begun to understand its true strength. For the first time, humanity's future was not in the hands of a fragile alliance. It was in their own hands, and that was both terrifying and liberating. But the battle for Earth was far from over. Even as Selene led humanity's fight back, there was something she hadn't expected. In the ruins of the Orzaki Command Center, while searching for any remaining data or resources, Selene stumbled upon an unexpected artifact, a relic unlike any other she had encountered before. It was a fragment of alien technology, older than the Orzaki themselves, covered in strange, unfamiliar symbols. She didn't know what it was at first, but as she investigated further, something astonishing came to light, an ancient message encoded in a long-forgotten language buried deep within the artifact. The language was complex, but Selene's knowledge of alien communication systems helped her decode it. And what the message revealed changed everything. The message came from an ancient species, one that had once ruled the galaxy millennia before the Orzaki, before even the first signs of galactic civilization. This species had seeded many worlds, including Earth, intentionally guiding their development for reasons unknown. The message, fragmented but clear in its intent, suggested that humanity wasn't a mere experiment or a random creation, as the Orzaki had believed. Humanity was designed, created with a purpose far beyond anything Selene had ever imagined. Earth, humanity's home, was not just a planet to be controlled, harvested, or conquered. It was the birthplace of a species with a destiny that stretched far beyond the Orzaki's petty schemes. The message implied that humanity was never meant to be a footnote in the galaxy's history. No, humanity was always intended to inherit the universe, just not in the way anyone had ever expected. The revelation hit Selene hard. For all her years of research, for all her battles against the Orzaki, she had never truly understood the cosmic scale of humanity's existence. The Orzaki, with their centuries of manipulation, had thought of humanity as a mere plaything, a tool to be harvested for its intellectual resources. But the truth was far more complicated. Humanity wasn't a tool in someone else's game, it was the game. The Orzaki were merely players, a small piece of a much larger, far more ancient design. Selene didn't know what to make of it. The implications were too vast. Had humanity been playing the Orzaki's game all along, without ever realizing it? Had the Orzaki simply been one step in a larger puzzle, one that humanity was destined to solve, for better or worse? Were they the final creation in a long chain of evolution, leading to something greater than even the Orzaki could imagine? She didn't have the answers. But what she knew was that this was a turning point. A discovery like this wasn't just an academic curiosity. It was the key to understanding humanity's future in the galaxy. The Orzaki's plan to absorb Earth and reshape the galaxy had been one version of the truth, but it was only part of a much larger and far older truth. Humanity was meant for something greater, and now they had to decide whether they would rise to meet that destiny or fall into the shadow of the Orzaki and their empire. Celine stood at the edge of a cliff, looking out over the ruined landscape of Earth. The planet was scarred, but it was still standing. It was still breathing. And in that moment, she realized that humanity had already begun to fight for its future, not just in the physical sense, but in a way that transcended everything the Orzaki had ever planned. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about defining what humanity was meant to be. The question lingered in her mind, unanswered. Were we ever meant to be a part of this galaxy, or is it simply our turn to rise and fall? Celine didn't know. But the fight for humanity's future wasn't over. It had only just begun. And in the end, the choice would be humanity's. They would decide if they would rise, if they would shape the galaxy on their own terms, or if they would fall another species lost to time, another casualty in the universe's grand eternal game. Celine didn't have the answers, but she was ready to fight for humanity's right to find them.